How you doing, guys? Today I thought I would take a look at the speed selector arm and adjustment rod from the 56 RJ35. Things I just wanted to kind of note to you before I actually dig in to kind of fix or restore this speed selector arm is this here is the arm that came off of the RJ. You can see that somebody took some time in order to kind of make this. This is the arm that we made, or I made I should say, the last go around. This is the replacement arm, just like the original. And this is the original pivot from the tractor. I just screwed it on so I wouldn't lose it. But somebody took a piece of 3/8 bar stock. They did it with a coarse thread, 3/8, I believe it's 18, 3/8 18, 3/8 16, something like that, I don't know. Well, anyways, at that end, and it had a fine thread on this end for this U-joint, pivot joint, instead of the original style, you know, just a piece of 3/8 rod bent with the cotter pin holding it in. I mean, they actually took time, because you got to remember too, right behind the speed selector in the center position is the hood stand. So what they needed to do was to make clearance between the hood stand and this particular pivot. So what they did was they actually took a bolt, and somebody sat there and ground the head super thin, which is kind of cool, but that's a lot of work, especially to have it that flat. I mean, it's pretty well done. Then also, because of the thickness of the actual pivot, this being the original, they actually sat there and they ground this side of the pivot down in order to get it thin enough with the bolt to clear the hood stand. So they put a bunch of effort into this, and I commend them. I mean, it's actually kind of a cool design. I mean, you got adjustment at this end, and you would have had adjustment at the pivot end, or the adjustment pivot. So you could actually get this thing really dialed in nice, but the original was just so much easier to make. You think you would have just taken a piece of 3/8 rod and just made one of these things, but in any event, we're not using this any longer. This is going bye-bye, so we can just take that right out of the frame. We're not going to use the bolt, but this brings in an interesting facet to the speed selector arm itself. Clearly, over the course of time, it cracked right here, the original bar, which is the inside bar towards this side. It cracked just like all the other ones, all the ones that I've ever seen. So what they did was they actually took another piece of 3/8 bar, it looks as if, and they just welded up the sides in order to strengthen the arm up. This knob is clearly not an original knob. It's reminiscent of a old snowblower ball. If you ever seen one of those are big in New England, snowbirds. Really good snowblowers, but this is probably off an old snowbird snowblower. So, but we're not going to use that either, so we can take that out of the frame. Don't need that anymore. So here's the dilemma. I don't want to reinvent the wheel and make a whole new one of these. So I'm debating on doing something like take my die grinder and just gingerly grind this weld down both sides and peel this bar off and save the original. The other thing I'm thinking about doing is just basically nipping it here and cutting it right here, and then just replacing this portion of the bar, then obviously rethread one for the original style bar. Or the third, take it here and then take this weld off down here and then replace the entire bar. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to try to separate this from the actual original arm, see how bad it looks. I may have to re-weld this area right here just to make sure we have a good joint, but if it's really messed up all the way across, then I'll either replace it. Okay, after all that grinding, basically what I did is I took the die grinder, ground the weld down almost all the way through, both sides, and then I took a hacksaw and carefully sawed it right along the edge all the way down. Essentially trying to not, you know, interfere with the original rod, but just to peel this original rod off. And I just didn't finish taking it all the way off. It's just held on by just a couple molecules of metal. But if we just kind of take this and just, there it is. And actually the weld is pretty good. And I cut it pretty straight, you know. Would have liked to seen it a little bit more cut into this than into the actual rod. But you can tell I haven't really hit the rod too much. So what I'm going to do here is I think I'm going to hit it with a file first to see if I can knock this down straight. If not, I'll get the angle die grinder with a sanding disc and I'll knock that down quicker. Okay, we had a fail and here it is. Ta-da! Ultimately what had happened was I filed it down. As you can see, I had to use my angle grinder a little bit to get that weld knocked down. And what had happened is, as you can maybe tell, the inside of the weld that they used to put this arm back together didn't penetrate at all, and that was probably the reason why they had that other bar added on. So what we're going to do, or what I'm going to did, is I'm going to fix all this up, get it all nice and smooth, fix this end up, get this all nice and smooth, and I'm going to bevel it, clean it all up, and then I'm just going to hit it with the welder. I'm just going to weld the arm back together. It's all going to be hidden with the factory weld, but I think that's the easiest and the best way to fix this. Okay, as you can see, I have totally cleaned up the top, beveled it a little bit. I've also done the same at the end of the threaded piece. And what we're going to do is, not today because it's raining, I weld out in my driveway. I don't like welding in the garage with the cars and stuff. So I'll get my magnetic angle and stick it to this so that way it's nice and straight and perfect. And I will weld it. And as you can tell, let's try to get a little better close-up if I can. There we go. You can see I beveled it. I beveled it pretty good. So when I go ahead and fill this in with with the MIG welder, that's all going to be one. That's not going to break again. Plus it'll look like, and then I have plenty of room to grind it with the cookie wheel in order to get that to look just nice and original. Well, there you go, guys. It's pretty welded up real nice. Can hardly tell where the weld is. On the back side here, I did build up the weld a little bit more than what would have been there originally, only because, you know, I wanted to be strong. So overall, I'm really happy with the way this came out. I thought I'd end the video basically the way I started. When we started this video, we had this adjustment rod in place, which was obviously not original. Somebody did take some time to put that together, and it probably worked to a point, but it's just not an RJ35 setup. With that being said, we took that off and we made a new adjustment rod. I did that in the other video. Also, there was this extra piece of 3/8 bar stock that was welded to the, I guess, the front, if you want to call it, of the speed selector arm, because it had cracked originally, and this was what they used to reinforce their non-weld. But we have completely fixed that, so now we have a perfectly original looking and fully functional speed selector arm. We have a fully functional and original style adjustment rod, and as I had indicated before, the pivot was fine. So this is done. The speed selector setup for the RJ35 is completely finished. Just needs to be bolted back, cleaned. I'll probably put a little bit of primer on this and a little bit of Rudy primer on this, just so it won't flash rust that fast. But other than that, this part of the tractor is done. Really, there's only one other thing I need to do. I need to fix the paws and weld up one of the hubs, the teeth, in order to fix that. And then I could blow that tractor apart, clean it, and start putting it back together with some new bushings and bearings. All right, see you a little later. Thank you.